Okay, hope you guys can hear me. I'm gonna wait on a mod to show up so I can see if this is actually going to work. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start. This is Jimmy Martin. Jimmy Martin is, oh, hang on just a moment. Hey, SRB, can you hear me? I'm hoping this mic works. Okay, good. So you can hear me. All right. So Jimmy Martin was actually murdered in 1986, and they have finally made an arrest. And it's a very small town. It's my hometown. It's where I grew up. And I was just going to go over the whole case. I was just going to go over it my way. But then once I saw this podcast, it's like there's no way that I could do it better than them. So I asked for their permission and they said, sure, go right ahead. Thank you for sharing our family story. So it's, if you could share this link, it's Small Town Forgotten. It's on YouTube. They are amazing. It's a family thing. Jimmy has twin daughters and they have fought for justice this whole time. They have fought for their dad. And finally they have made an arrest. Let's see. Let me start over here. It's actually very, very interesting. I'm amazed with them. I'm amazed with how much that family has fought for justice and they have just kept on with it. And it's just amazing. It really is. Okay, so we're going to start right here and then we'll kind of talk in between.
Chris Hulsey, and I'm the host of the upcoming podcast and documentary Small Town Forgotten. I want to thank everybody who has liked, commented, shared, and subscribed our content on social media already. Our trailer video that we put out hit 42,000 views in 1 week, and that is amazing. That's all thanks to you. The real reason I'm here is I want to invite you, everybody who's already watching, to share with us. If you have any information regarding the murder of Jimmy Wade Martin, or if you have a story about Jimmy that you would just like to share, I would love to hear anything that you guys have. You can call our information line at 323-379-5722, or you can send us an email at info@smalltownforgotten.com. Remember, episode 1 comes out November 13th. You can listen on Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to share, I would love to listen.
Had no idea that that would be the last time we would see our daughter.
With all their personal belongings there, their purses, their jewelry, obviously at that point you think
If I'm not mistaken, I had talked to him that day.
I was about ready to go out the door. I get a phone call from Jim. And he said, I don't know what it is, but I just got to tell you how much I love you. I said, I know. I said, I got to go. I'm on my way to work. Click. Phone rings again. Another phone call from him. He's like, I just got to tell you again how much I love you. He said, and don't ever forget it. And then I had went out with some friends. That night, midnight hit. I got hateful. I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I just want to go home. And they're like, well, Diane, what's the matter? I go, I don't know. I just felt like something.
We were first recording this episode, we had over 5,800 downloads, and now we have increased those downloads by over 1,000. We have over 50,000 views on Facebook and over 3,000 followers on social media. Our listeners are from all over the world, from every state in the U.S., many of them from Illinois, California, and Texas, as far away as Hawaii and as remote as Alaska. And to my surprise, we have a large number of listeners in Canada, Australia, and the UK. And a special hello to our lone listener in South Africa. The response from our second episode has blown me away. I'm so floored and grateful to have reached so many people. I'm especially thankful to all of our listeners in our home state of Missouri. It's all of you who are going to make a difference in this case, and who already have made a difference in this case.
I remember when you used to sing Alabama all the time when you were Daddy's little babies. But you are Daddy's big girls now. Dad is so proud of his girls. I can't believe you are in 6th grade. It seems like yesterday I was just holding you in my arms.
Those are the thoughts of Jimmy Wade Martin, written in a letter that he gave to the twins just a month before he died. The twins read this letter to me when we recently sat down for an interview, and you could tell they've read it themselves countless times. He was proud of those little girls when they were 11. I could only imagine what he would think of them now. He is family to me, but I didn't know Jimmy Wade. I was too young to know him when he was alive, but I know the people who formed him into the person that he was. And when I talk to them, they tell me roughly the same thing about him, that he was happy-go-lucky, full of life, and that he also was a bit of a hellraiser. He didn't back down from anyone. We know that he drank and that he had a temper when pushed. But every person I spoke with told me how much he loved his family, and especially those twin girls. The first interview I want to share with you is with my grandma and my great aunt Kathy. They were not blood related to Jimmy, but these two women not only knew him well and for a long time, but also knew Jimmy Wade's wife, his sisters, and his parents. Before you listen to it, it would help to remind you of some of the family relationships. Jimmy Wade's parents were Jim and Niecy Martin. Jim was the oldest Martin of 6 kids. Mike was the youngest Martin, and he and Kathy were married. We lost Uncle Jim in 2000, and Uncle Mike passed away earlier this year. Sean, our director, also sat down with us. And remember, my grandma, Joyce Johnson, is Sean's mother, and she was married to Dan Martin, the 3rd or 4th sibling of the Martin family. He's a twin, so it's hard to know the birth order. That is to say, we are sitting down with Jimmy Wade's aunts, but aunts that were not so far away in age. In fact, my great aunt Kathy was the same age as Jimmy Wade.
I knew Jimmy before I knew Uncle Mike. Me, Jimmy, Jeannie, and my sister Connie were all friends. Hung out at their house all the time. They came to our house. I remember Jimmy loved life. He was always happy,
Happy-go-lucky.
daredevil.
Yeah. Yeah. He did what he wanted to do.
Yes, he did. And he was a good friend. He was a real good friend. Diane was the love of his life.
I really believe that.
I do too. He loved
And
her with all his heart.
Jimmy was the love of Diane's life.
Mhm.
She wouldn't ever put up with all of it. And then she never did get remarried or nothing. I mean, this has been on her mind since that happened.
I know that she was the love of his life. He's told us. He loved her with all his heart. They just somehow
Crashed
Crashed.
sometimes,
they were both headstrong.
When Jimmy passed away, Niecy just lost it. She was never the same. Never got over it. Never.
Never.
In what way?
Losing
It
Jimmy.
broke her heart.
Her son, it's her only son, and then the way he did, and then nobody has been,
Held accountable.
held accountable for it.
Mhm.
Because I used to go visit Aunt Niecy. when
She mourned
went on
herself
the
to
visit.
death.
Yes. I totally believe that.
Mhm. Jimmy was a hellraiser. and he did like to party, but Jimmy was also good. He had a good heart. He worked hard.
He knew everybody in Bonne Terre because he was always out and about.
And he was likable. Everybody liked him.
Yeah.
Your Uncle Bill said one time, everyone who met Jimmy Wade liked him, and if they didn't like him, they were either afraid of him or jealous of him. He was just, if you needed something, you could call him and he would be there. When Jimmy passed away, his funeral was so packed, they had to stand along the sides of the walls and in the back. And when we left to go to the funeral home, as we're pulling in that road there by Chuck and BJ's, they're still coming out of the funeral home in cars. That's how many people were there. That's when I'll start crying when I think about that, because that's what I was telling you. I can remember getting that phone call and Uncle Mike just breaking down and crying and driving to their house, and Jimmy's mom sitting there just sobbing, big sobs. And she looked at Uncle Mike and said, I feel like someone's reached into my chest and pulled my heart out, and I don't think I'll ever recover. And I remember your Uncle Jimmy sit down, get up, sit down, and because he was lost. And your grandma, she just didn't know what to do. She was trying to console him, but she was heartbroken.
Too, yeah.
I remember Dana ironing Jimmy's shirt, writing a note, and putting the note in his pocket. And the twins with their tears coming down because they knew their daddy was gone, but they didn't know why. And I remember having to take Diane to the hospital because she was so distraught and so grief-stricken. I remember all that Jeannie. It took something out of Jeannie that day, and she's never got it back. Never. They were all just so heartbroken. His life just ended so violently.
Jimmy Wade was loved. He had a family, and they loved him, faults and all. He had friends, a lot of friends, and it seemed that they loved him too. To give you an idea of his friendships, I spoke with one of his close friends earlier this week, Richard.
He was a real good friend of mine. He's one of my best friends. Jimmy was the kind of guy you wanted to be around because he was, it never got boring when he was around. I mean, as far as partying, you wanted to party with Jimmy because his motto was there's nothing better than a good time. He was a great guy. Everybody liked Jimmy. I didn't know of any enemies that he had. Jimmy's, he didn't start anything, but he's a little guy. I think he was 150 pounds, probably 5'6". He was a little cocky, but a guy that size growing up around here in the 70s, you had to be a little cocky or you got walked on. He was a family guy. He had two lovely daughters, and he was something else. But as far as that happening to him, I wasn't around here, but I know that somebody knows something about that. When back in those days, if a fight broke out somewhere, there was always whoever was there was watching. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And somebody knows. I've heard bits and pieces of what happened, but but that's hearsay. You got to get people under oath and have them talk.
Sure.
As far as character-wise, I really can't think of anybody that would have anything bad to say about it. And I was close to a lot of his family. The Martins, and the Martins are hard people to beat. Like your grandfather.
Right.
He's just, he's a real good friend of mine, and it got to all them guys because they were all close to Jimmy.
Yeah, I think it took a pretty good toll on my family.
Yes, it did. If anybody's listening to this, hey, be a decent citizen. Tell what you know.
Absolutely.
It's been way too long, and justice needs to be served.
The Small Town Forgotten podcast is brought to you by Nuke's Hot Sauce. Nuke's Hot Sauce, an all-natural hot sauce company based out of Portland, Oregon. Spice up your meals with any of our 4 hot.
I don't think we need any hot sauce. So we'll just continue to the next one. Any questions, guys, so far? Any at all? Not even one? Okay.
October, Friday the 13th, 1989, Jimmy Wade Martin's body was found on a street in the small town of Bonne Terre, Missouri. When there are witnesses, a murder weapon, and a taped confession, how exactly does a murder become a cold case?
It started at that little bar.
This case is not ended by any stretch of the imagination.
A lot of people in that town's not going to
Rumor has it was
big brawl, big bar fight.
County Jail.
We have been working so hard on this.
I can't be silent anymore. Like
You know that guy that got killed here last night? There was rumors going around like the next day. He started doing a lot with Facebook.
The question is, what happened to Jimmy Wade Martin?
From Blueburn Productions, this is Small Town Forgotten. I'm your host, Chris Halsey. Thank you all for joining us again for this special part 2 of our 3rd episode. We released part 1 earlier this week, and I talked to Jimmy Wade's aunts, his friend Richard, and his widow, Diane. In this part, I talk with Jimmy Wade's 3 sisters, Dana, Jeannie, and Dawn, to get a better idea of the person that Jimmy was. I think it's important for you to hear from the people who really knew Jimmy Wade. This is not just a story about an unsolved murder. It's more than that. It's also a story about the people who are changed and damaged by that murder. These testimonies are not just for you to hear what kind of person Jimmy Wade was, but so you can hear and hopefully begin to understand how this murder still hurts, even 3 decades later. How the case had seemed to be solved because a man confessed, and then the case was dropped, and then nothing. How they tried to move on, but they can't. And how these people are still suffering from the unanswered questions. It isn't just a scar. It's an open wound. These interviews were some of the hardest conversations I've had concerning Jimmy Wade's murder, because I know it was so difficult for them to talk about it.
Would you guys rather me just go to the next one where we start getting down to the case, or do you want to hear the victims and the family? Well, not really the victim, just the families and their wounds, because that kind of gets to the heart more than anything. It's up to you guys. Do you want me to just jump right into the case, or you want to hear from them? Yes, SRB, he was. He was found in the street on the side. Yes. Okay. All right, then we'll just continue. Thank you, Paula.
To be completely honest, before we spoke, I wasn't even sure that they would talk to me at all. Jimmy was the second oldest of his siblings. Dana was his motherly older sister, and from what I can tell, was always the center of positivity in the family. Jeannie was the 3rd oldest, and so close in age to Jimmy that people often thought they were twins. They were even in the same grade in school. Growing up, they were best friends. Jeannie is quick and direct. Dawn is the youngest, the baby of the family. I've known her my entire life, but I've never heard her called Dawn. My family has always called her Dodie. She is a bit more reserved and quiet. She told me that she looked up to Jimmy Wade as her older brother and protector. Not only did these women lose their brother, but all 3 experienced a seismic shift in their belief system when he was murdered. They took for granted that they were protected and safe in a small town where everybody knows everybody. What happened still affects them. It still affects their thoughts and their choices for their own families. I know that they all discussed with each other whether or not to talk to me about the murder, and I am very grateful that they all agreed to do it.
Hello?
Dana?
Yes.
Hey, this is Chris Halsey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I know
I'm
you've talked
good.
to Sean.
Yep, I've talked to Sean a couple of times. I appreciate you guys so much doing this. This is wonderful. What you guys have took on, and the twins have been amazing. They are a force to reckon with.
They really are. They I couldn't believe when we met for the first time and they started showing me everything that they had done. I was blown away.
Yeah, we have over the years have given, pictures that we've come across of their dad, and we had all the newspaper clippings and different things, and Jeannie had all that, and of course I had it too, but we didn't double up on it. We just, Jeannie gave her all of her stuff, and so hopefully that kind of helped them go in the right direction.
Yeah.
Some of it.
I'm sure a lot of the stuff I have probably came from you guys.
It might have. Every time I've come across pictures, I've given to them. And then Jeannie, I know she had all the coroner's report and all that stuff. So she was like a dog with a bone when this happened. To be honest, she went around and talked to the people and asked questions. And her and Jimmy were close in age.
Right.
And so they were two peas in a pod practically. And what one didn't think of, the other one did. It was pretty much they're growing up. But when he died, when he was murdered, I think she went around and questioned all the neighbors and, actually the police. I think she just went as far as she could go. And I think it got to the point to where she had to start letting some of it go because it was eating her up and affecting her family, her children.
What was important to Jimmy? What did Jimmy hold dear?
Can you imagine? Oh my goodness. I'm sure they all held guilt, and they all just missed him so much, and they lived right there, right near each other. So for this to happen in this small town, it affected so many. I mean, everyone from the people at the bar that night to his family, to his friends. And then they've went 30 years with no answers, like none. So I just feel for the twins so much because they just never gave up. Not one time. They just would not give up. And I love that. They're little Barbara Halls is what they are. And Karens. The good Karen, not the bad Karen.
Family. He's just family. He loved family. We love get-togethers, and he loved Diane and them girls. And him and my mom were extremely close. Jimmy was real sick when he was little, and mom she slept with him on her chest because he had asthma, I think it was. And but he was definitely a mom's boy, and she definitely favored Jimmy. It's that boy-mom relationship. And but he loved family.
What kind of person was Jimmy growing up? What was he like as a kid?
He was a boy.
All boy?
All boy. All boy. When we moved down here the first summer, we lived in St. Louis, and Mom kept pretty close reins on us when we lived in St. Louis. She wouldn't let us just go off. The park was across the street. She would let us go there, but she kept pretty tight reins on us. But when we moved down here, we were like birds out of a cage, and the first summer, he was just like a banshee, he just went, but he was a good brother, but he was a boy, and he was all boys. And, but, he was a good brother, and, he was my baby brother, and, loved him dearly, but he wasn't climbing it. He was going over it. If he wasn't going over it, he was going under it or through it. He was just all boy. He was just all boy.
Oh, that's funny.
He loved life. And when you were around him, it was contagious. I mean, from playing volleyball in grandma's yard to just sitting and visiting, wrestling with the boys or whatever it was. He was always just happy and loved to be around family and always had a good time. He never appeared to be upset or troubled about anything, as when we got together, he always was excited to be with the family. And if he had the girls, it was all about the girls or, just whatever was going on. But Jimmy loved life and he was contagious. It was contagious. You enjoyed being around Jimmy.
Do you remember where you were when you got the call or when someone told you what had happened?
Yeah, I was at home, and we got a knock on the door, and answered the door, and it was Daddy, and he proceeded in telling us. And when he was talking to me in the hallway, of course, I'm horribly upset, and my oldest son was in his bedroom, and he jumps up out of his bed and he starts screaming, "Let go of my mom! You let go of my mom!" And Dodie went in to console him, and while Daddy was talking to Gary and I. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever live long enough to forget that night. The horror on Mom and Dad's face, you just don't ever want to see that. Mom and Dad were never the same. Our family get-togethers were never the same. Dinner was never the same because Jimmy wasn't there. And but Mom, she never got over it. She actually took it to the grave with her. I think Mom grieved herself to death. She never got over losing Jimmy.
And that's the hardest part, is knowing that the mom took it to the grave. She didn't get to actually see him get justice. But the daughters did. Of course, it's not went to trial yet because they just made the arrest. Just probably, I would say maybe 3 weeks ago.
And now Daddy, he hadn't smoked in 10 years. And he just picked up the cigarettes and started smoking again. But the day it happened, Daddy was out in the front yard and Gary and I were there. And my dad was walking around in circles. And like I said, some things you never forget, some things you can't remember, but there's some things that just stick with you. And I watched my dad walking around in the front yard and Grandma was walking behind him. And he kept saying, "My God, Mom, they killed my boy. They killed my boy." He'd say that, and then he'd stop me, turn around, he'd say, "Mom, what am I going to do with Niecy?" Which that's what he called my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And, but Daddy, it was almost like he turned white-headed right before my eyes. When something like that hits your family, even sisters, I know the girls, Mom and Dad, how they grieve. We watched them. And I know the girls, lived their life without their dad, and Diane without her husband. But I think when evil like that hits your family, it changes your whole way of thinking. So it affects you. You don't go unscathed, that's for sure. You carry it with you. Person that took my brother's life stole time from his daughters, most importantly. Those girls grew up without their daddy, without knowing what a wonderful man he was. Because he was. Did he have flaws? Absolutely. But he was a good, hardworking man. And he cherished those girls. And he loved Diane. And I think if he hadn't died, he'd still be married to Diane today. Because they loved each other. I will talk to my sisters a dozen times a day. And I never hang that phone up that I don't tell them I love them. And we're just a close family. And it would be nice to have closure to this. So one other thing I want to tell you, too, of course, it's Stone Mountain, but the last words that Jimmy said to my mom was, "I love you." And, you know, a lot of families fight and don't get along. Ours always has. And, but him telling Mom, that Mom hung on to that, you know, through all her grieving. She, you know, that was the last words he said to her, that he loved her. Because he had called her and she told him to be careful. And he said, "Oh, I will." He said, I'll be careful. And I don't know what all the conversation was. He said, "I love you, Mom." And that was his last words he said to her.
I spoke with Dana for almost an hour. Something like this, a death in the family by a murder, it has a reverberating effect throughout the years. You should know, especially if you're one of the people who actually know what really happened, you should know that Jimmy Wade was not the only one who suffered that night. That Jimmy Wade's parents, especially his mother, never recovered from the tragedy. She died when she was only 58 years old. And Jimmy's sisters, they didn't just lose their brother. They feel they lost their parents as well.
What's up, true crime podcast listener? Hope you're enjoying Small Town Forgotten, a podcast that
A lot of people in that town's not going to.
You know, rumor has it was
big brawl, big bar fight.
County Jail.
We have been working so hard on this.
I can't be silent anymore. You know, like,
You know that guy that got killed here last night?
There was rumors going around like the next
He
day.
started doing a lot with Facebook.
The question is, what happened to Jimmy Wade Martin?
From Blueburn Productions, this is Small Town Forgotten. I'm your host, Chris Hulsey. We had a listener comment on one of our channels that isn't the simplest answer, usually the right one. Occam's razor, or the law of parsimony, as the theory is called. It states that when presented with a question, you should choose the answer with the least amount of assumptions. The obvious answer, you could say. So in Jimmy Wade Martin's murder case, the simplest answer is that David Brian White did it, right? Because he was the one who was arrested for the crime. He was the one who admitted to having a weapon that night, and that weapon was found near Jimmy's body. But to me, there's nothing simple about a stranger coming into a town and accidentally killing someone he doesn't know, and then not being convicted for it. I would argue that a simpler answer would be that Jimmy Wade was killed by someone he knew. At the time of the murder, the Bureau of Justice had announced that 80% of murder victims knew their killers. Now that's a large percentage, and deserves some consideration at least. But let's learn about David Brian White. This 24-year-old man who had, whether you believe he did it or not, you have to agree, had been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And see, that's it. How he said that it's probably the most simple answer. And usually it is. It usually is the absolutely the most simplest thing. Whatever is the most simple but makes a little bit of sense, it works. But at the same time, not all cases are like that. And I think, I don't know, for him to say that, it's so touchy to me, because usually, yes, it is the simple truth, but sometimes it's so complicated. But I don't think I need to tell you guys that.
On that night.
This has really troubled me for years now. For years, it just drove me nuts. They knew.
2 people were arrested for the murder of Jimmy Wade Martin the weekend he was killed. One of them was dismissed in the subsequent days, and the other, David Brian White, was dismissed 3 years later. A local newspaper article from 2007 stated that the charges against David Brian White were dropped because the prosecuting attorney felt there were problems with the evidence in the case that could not be overcome. In episode 2, we shared the transcript from David Brian White's interview with the police from 1989. And in this episode, I want to share with you another transcript. Unfortunately, at this time, we cannot reveal the name of this person of interest who spoke with the police. And as always, we'll have to beep out any additional names when the actors read them from the transcript. Before we get into it, though, I want to point out a couple of things that we have learned from previous episodes. First, in the police report, a witness had stated that 3 men had been chasing David Brian White, and in David Brian White's police interview, he also stated that 3 men were chasing him. Second, in David Brian White's police interview, he stated that one of the men chasing him had a baseball bat and that he didn't pick up the timber until he got to Mound Street. And the last thing I want to point out is that the police report witnesses and David Brian White have stated that there were multiple fights that night. I've even had people that were there that night tell me that it was like a scene from the movie Roadhouse. We're going to call this witness Tom Anderson. I want to give a thank you to the actors who agreed to read the transcript, Troy Metcalf and Logan Wilmore.
Okay, today's date is October 16th, 1989. Time is 2:42 p.m. This is the...
Yes, SRB. I'm sorry. I should have said that. All of this is recorded before. Like they started this. I think they started it last year or the year before. So we're just going in order of their podcasts. But yeah, at this time they hadn't made an arrest at all, and they had no idea. All they knew was that one guy went to the sheriff's department and said, "Hey, I'm the one that hit the guy. I didn't know I killed him. There was so many guys. I had a 2x4. I just started swinging it around in circles." And then it kind of matches up. Now we understand. But from the point right here, it's just still this crazy case where a guy thinks he did it, but did he? I mean, there was not enough there to actually charge him. They arrested the guy, they questioned him, and they just didn't have enough.
taped statement of in regards to the death of Jimmy Martin in the early morning hours of October the 14th, 1989. Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is date of birth November 18th, 1966.
Okay, my name is Officer Alan Spiegel, Bonne Terre Police Department. Is there anyone else present in the room besides us?
No.
Okay. What I want to ask you is the death of Jimmy Wade Martin Jr., like I said, it happened in the early morning hours of Saturday. If you would just give me the rundown on what you'd seen, what happened.
Well, I seen Dave at the corner, and he started this conversation about a pole, and that's how it started, the conversation. He said he was going to beat up somebody that night. I remember him saying that, he started following us down to that bar. I don't remember the name of it.
The Cold Ben?
That's it. And I turned around, and he was standing behind me, and I looked at his mom, and I went over and started talking to her, and then I went back outside, and he followed me outside, and then he kept telling, "Why don't you go get your dad so I can beat him up?" She finally said, "All right, I'll go in and get him." And then she started to go in, and I followed her, and he started coming in behind us, and this ruckus started. I don't know what it was about, but everybody just came outside, and I seen somebody just get hit in the face. I don't know who it was that got hit, and there's a bunch of people were running around in circles, I've seen somebody go in a car. I don't know whose car it was or anything, and I seen Dave, the guy behind him, but there was a guy in front of him, so they were running after this other guy. They went around the corner. I don't know what the name of the street was, but by that parking lot, I guess that's the corner right there.
Would it be the street right beside the parking lot of the Cold Ben?
The Cold Ben.
That would be Vine Street.
They went around that corner. By the time I got down there, I got up against a wall. I didn't want to get hit. And by the time I got down there, Jimmy was laying on the ground.
Okay. Where did you see him laying on the ground at?
right by the side of the road, right there. I don't know if that's where he got hit or not, but that's where I seen him. And he was like by the side of the road, but in the street though. And everybody came running down there. And I didn't see Dave right after that happened because I left. In plain words, you know, I didn't want to get involved with it. I know the guy who got killed now. My dad knows his father. You know what I mean?
Okay. Did you see him laying? Was it the street beside the coal bin, or was it the street on up where he was laying?
Right around the corner, up the street some. The only street I know, I don't know the street too good.
In relation to the car wash, where is the street at?
Right across the street from the car wash.
Okay. Did you see David White hit?
No, I didn't see him get hit. Or
do you know Jimmy Martin personally?
I don't know him personally, but
I mean, do you know him? Do you know him if you would see him?
I know him. Yeah, I know him.
Okay. And you didn't see David White hit Jimmy?
No, I didn't.
Well, you've seen David. I mean, let me show you a picture. This is a report we have on the homicide. Okay, do you recognize this man?
Yeah, he was outside with one of the guys that came out of the bar.
Okay, he was the one chasing Jimmy Martin?
He was right behind him.
Right behind him running?
Yeah.
Okay, what is the name on the top of that page for that picture?
That's it.
Okay, and he was one of them chasing Jimmy Martin.
He was right behind with Dave. Dave was like the second person. Like they three was running.
No.
But Dave came out right behind him.
Okay, and he ran up the street also?
Yes.
Okay, you stated that you've seen David White, and the man in this picture is the ones chasing Jimmy Martin.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, where did you lose sight of them at?
When they got up around that corner and started running down the street, and by the time I got down there, see, at first I wasn't gonna run down there, but I did, and then I seen what happened. I turned around and left.
Okay, was there anybody around Jimmy Martin's body when you got there?
There was a bunch of people around him.
Oh,
there was a bunch of people yelling and screaming. And
was David White still there when you got there?
When I got there, I didn't see him. I don't know if he ran back up the street or if he was in the crowd or whatever, but...
Okay, was still there?
I didn't see him after that. I didn't see him after that.
But the best of your recollection, there was only two people chasing Jimmy Martin?
That's all I seen. Go around the corner, two people chasing him. Yeah.
You don't have any idea who it was he was fighting at the bar when they came outside?
No, I just seen somebody standing out there in the street with a beer. I guess when the ruckus started, everybody came out there and...
I don't know. What do you guys think? It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. But then you see two guys chasing this other guy, but you don't know him. I don't know about that. I mean, I just don't know. I think in a small town, if you're in that town, you know everybody there. You're drinking with them. You're having a good time. You know. I think. I could be wrong. Just my opinion.
I seen somebody pop somebody. I just all of a sudden somebody got popped. It reminds me of him that got popped. Yeah, I think it was him that got popped.
Okay. Do you know who popped him?
No, I don't think. He had a hat on, I think, that night though. I know that's him because I looked right down at him when he got popped in the face, and he was going like this. That's what everybody started.
Did somebody hit him with their fist or with a weapon or?
With their fist.
It was with their fist. Okay. Had you seen? Was Jimmy Martin involved in this ruckus?
Jimmy Martin, he came walking out I didn't see him hitting nobody at first. I didn't see, doing anything. Then they just went wild. I don't know what the hell. I don't know what happened, because I wasn't in there when the ruckus started.
How long was it after the altercation with and with somebody that David White chased Jimmy Martin?
I'd say right about after he got hit. It was about...
was it just a matter of seconds or...
I'd say 9-10 minutes.
So there was a pause there.
Yeah.
Between the...
Yeah, after he got hit, somebody pulled the guy off him that hit him.
Oh.
And they were screaming back and forth, and that's when I seen them go running around the corner.
Oh.
And
who was it that pulled the guy off?
I don't even know. I don't know half the people from around there.
Okay.
It was crowded. The place, it was packed.
Okay.
Really, I don't think anybody really...
Oh, okay. So I guess maybe he doesn't live there. I thought that he was like a regular there. So if he doesn't know many people around there, then maybe he genuinely, he didn't know. Maybe.
Really know what went on. It was just one of them things that blew up. But Dave, he was talking about all that stuff all night, walking down that street, and he just started scaring us,
Okay, but no time did you ever actually see the altercation between Jimmy Martin and whoever?
No, I didn't see who hit him.
Okay. Did you see any kind of weapon laying around Jimmy's body when you got there, like a sidewalk or anything?
I didn't walk close to him. I just walked up and I seen him laying there, and everybody started running, and I turned around and I didn't really want to get involved with it in plain words.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know where he went. I didn't trust him when I first saw him. When he walked up behind us coming down the street.
When you were standing around there, did anybody make any statements as to what had happened?
Well, after it all happened, I heard that somebody, had said that Jimmy got an insurance settlement that afternoon or that night.
Uh-huh.
For an accident. This is from what I hear, that he was in an accident and he got an insurance settlement, and he had pretty much cash in his pocket. He was going home and he stopped in there just to say hi to a few people. From what I hear, Jimmy only drank 2 beers when he was in there,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, from the way some people say, they must have overheard Jimmy talking about the insurance, and some people say that they might have just been trying to take him off. That's one of the stories I heard.
Okay. Did you see this and David White associated any time before this happened?
No.
Them talking together?
I just saw them when they came out, and that's when I seen him get popped in the face, hit in the face.
Do you have any idea what the guy looked like?
No, he was...
Okay. How was David White acting that night?
Weird. Real weird. Because when we came from my girlfriend's house, She said, take a walk down. She wanted to say hi to her dad.
No.
And her mom and stuff. We started down there, and like I said, by that Lamp Diner, that's when we meet up with this guy here, Dave. He just started talking, saying all kinds of weird stuff about he was in a cult or KKK or something, and just started talking real weird. He said he had to prove tonight. Kept saying that I got to prove something tonight. And it was just weird,
Oh.
To me, it sounded like something like he was going to go out and do something to prove something to somebody else. That's what it seemed like to me. And I just told him, we've got to go. And that's when the officer pulled up, and I didn't see what officer it was, but he was standing right there with the beer in his hand.
No.
And we walked away, and he just followed us. When I walked in, everything was fine. Everybody was having a good time, and everything was all right. But then as soon as he walked in, people came flying out the doors.
Who did he go to when he walked in? Did you notice?
Right behind me. He was right behind me, and then I turned around and I seen him there. And then, I was with my girlfriend. I said, I'm going out,
Oh.
And then I went out, and when I was ready to go back in, and that's when the ruckus started, and people came flying out the doors, and that's when I seen him get popped and, hit in the face.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as he came out the door, he had a beer in his hand, and somebody nailed him.
Is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
When he came out of the bar with a beer, somebody nailed him.
Yeah.
And then somebody pulled that guy off.
Yes. I don't know who hit him or who pulled him off. Then there were two girls fighting out there. I remember that too.
Who were they?
Nah, I don't know. I don't even know who they are. They're just two girls in a fight out front, but I don't even know who they were.
What did they look like?
One had long brownish hair and she wore glasses. The other one was a dirty blonde, maybe. I really didn't see because they were on the ground, just going at it. And that's, as soon as they got done, that's when the ruckus started.
Uh-huh.
That's when it started because they went back in after they got done fighting. They went back in and all the.
Yeah, he was quite the ladies' man too. Like, apparently he liked to have a good time, and women really liked him. And I think that was his downfall, was they liked him too much.
Other stuff started, and that's when everything started going haywire. I just remember that part. There was the two girls fighting, not right in front, but down the street some.
No, they fought after.
No, this was before that. I just remembered that part.
Oh, okay. The girls fought before.
Yes, that's before anything happened to Jimmy. I just remembered that there were two girls fighting.
Okay, so let's make sure we got this straight. Two girls fought first?
Yes, that's what happened first. That was the first little thing that went on.
That was after you and got there and David White got there.
Yeah. That's like when we walked up, they were fighting, There wasn't a lot of people out there or anything, they were just fighting and they got pulled off each other and everything was all right. They went back in. Then everything else started. That's when everything else went down. And we walked in and I walked back out and boom, stuff started. Fights and
okay. And did you see David fighting at the bar or out in front of the bar or any of the bar out in front of the bar?
I mean, he was all over the bar. That's when I seen him. After he got hit, Dave was running around. I don't know if he was trying to pull somebody off somebody or hitting somebody. I seen Dave down crouched over like that, and he got back up, and then they all went over by this one car. I don't know whose car it was. But it was dark, and it was by the parking lot. They went over by the car, and that's when they might have been going around the car to go down the street. They were by the car, and that's when I seen them run down the street. And I didn't follow them all the way down the street. Then after a while, I went down, and I didn't go no further after. I just saw him laying there, and that's all I seen.
Okay. How was Jimmy's body laying when you seen it? Just from what you could tell, the best you could tell.
He was either on his side or on his back. His neck was back like this. I wasn't real close. All I seen was him laying there.
Was there any blood that you could see?
I couldn't see that far. I didn't go that close to him.
You wouldn't have been able to see if there was,
No, he wasn't moving though. I didn't see him moving around or nothing at first, and I really didn't stay there too long. I didn't want to get in trouble.
Because I seen you come down with the fire department first.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Okay.
I was on the road.
When the rescue truck went by, how long do you think it was between then and when you went up there to see Jimmy's body? Just, roughly. I know you can't be exact on times.
Yeah. From the time I left from down there and went up to where I was in Tom's Market, I'd say 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
about that. Yeah.
Okay, because like I said, you definitely see David White.
Right, Paula, but I wonder, was he scared of maybe getting beat up or was he scared of getting in trouble? And that's because when I first listened, I was like, well, maybe, maybe he was just scared of these guys. But then the more I thought about it, I was thinking, well, he knew the police were showing up too. So I don't know which he would be scared of, but I do think he was scared. Yes.
Chasing Jimmy Martin.
I did see that. Yes.
You're positive that those were the two
that was chasing him? Correct.
Okay. And how far did you see them chase him before you lost sight of him?
Well, they went all the way around that corner, the street across from the car wash.
Okay. The street where he was found is Mound Street. Is that the street that you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. You never did see anybody actually hit Jimmy, is that right?
No. I didn't see whoever hit him. I don't know which one hit him.
Oh, okay. We're going to go ahead and end this statement. The time is 3:06 p.m. The date is October 16th, 1989. Has anybody else entered the room during this statement?
No. No one has.
Okay. Are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs at this time?
No, I ain't.
Okay. Thanks for your statement.
Before we talk about this, I want to bring your attention to the person who this witness, our Tom Anderson, says was also chasing Jimmy Wade. This is the same person who is in the police report as having been arrested that weekend and then let go. We are still protecting his identity, so I will refer to him as Shane Hill from here on out. When I first read a statement, I try to read it as if I believe everything that is being said is true. In this interview, Tom Anderson did not seem to have a high opinion of David White, that is for sure, but he did not seem to have seen David throw any punches or wield any timber. Tom does establish that at least parts of David White's story line up with his. Tom does corroborate that there were two girls fighting before Shane Hill was hit, and although David Brian White didn't know who Shane Hill was, he did describe a man getting hit and hit a lot, and we can presume that he meant Shane. The part where David and Tom's stories don't match up is that Tom didn't seem to think it was David who pulled the attacker off of Shane. It seemed like Shane and David were in the same vicinity near Tom, but maybe Tom just couldn't see them too well, and it was David who pulled the unknown fighter off of Shane. Or
so actually neither one of the guys hit were Jimmy. So, I mean, typical small town bar fight. I mean, one fight leads to the next fight. So this is where I got confused, because this whole time I thought they were talking about Jimmy getting hit, but to find out Jimmy was not the man that this guy was talking about. That's crazy to me. I mean, how many fights had went on at that time? Dang.
maybe David lied about being the hero. And then there's the part of Shane chasing Jimmy Wade. He was just popped, as they say, and repeatedly if someone had to be pulled off of him. Now, would a man who was just beaten to the point of needing to be saved be inclined or even be able to chase Jimmy Wade? Or was Jimmy Wade the person who did the popping? The truth is in here somewhere, but who is telling it? The simplest path to the truth is to talk to David Brian White. But the path to talk to David Brian White turned out not to be simple at all.
I'm trying to think what year I moved back here, because it started in 2007 when we really started doing a lot of work. But I didn't really, all I kept thinking is, what would it be like to talk to this guy? I wonder how I could get in contact with this guy. Well, back then you didn't have Facebook. I don't even think I had a cell phone at that time, actually. And it's like, how do you get in contact? And I just always imagine what I would say if I ever did. These would be the questions I would ask. So I never really got like this feeling that he had anything to do with it, except when he had his mom to take him to the hospital, and he asked how the guy that got hit was, and they said that he had passed he actually passed out in the hospital floor. So to me, if you're not guilty, why would you pass out? Like, that's the only thing that ever stood out in my mind that he was even ever guilty.
So you guys have talked with David White several times. How did that come about? What's that conversation like? You touched on it, but
well go ahead. We had went to the crime scene and met someone who knew exactly where it happened. And we were just looking around, and that evening it just seemed to get me more motivated. So I was like, I am just going to contact everybody, because on Facebook I couldn't determine who he was, but I think he had more than one Facebook account.
Right.
So I just started messaging people. Finally, his sister answered me that night, actually, because normally it takes forever for someone to answer me. And she's like, let me just get you in contact with his daughter. So didn't she tell you, though? Because you called me and you're like, you're never going to believe this, that David White's sister said, all I know is that my brother passed out because he thought he killed someone. The next day, they showed him a picture of your dad. And he said, that is not the guy I hit. Mm-hmm. And so then it kind of put in perspective what, she said that's the only thing that bothered her. And you think about it, if you hit someone and you thought you killed them, you probably would pass out. Your life is over. Mm-hmm. And so go ahead. So I get in contact. His daughter ended up calling me. Sweetheart. We ended up getting along great. She said, I'm going to see him Saturday. Come with me. So Saturday morning, we meet her. And we're in the lobby just talking like we're just been friends for years. Like, she's very approachable. She's very personable. Always willing to help. Mm-hmm. We just hit it off with her. After we went to the jail, we actually took her to lunch and had lunch. And then later on that night, we went to her house. So we had a whole day with her.
It had to be surreal.
Yes, very. And I think it was even, she didn't meet her father till she was 18. Mm-hmm. So, we walk into that jail knowing he did not know we were coming and he didn't know who we were. Yeah. So we walk in with her and my heart was pounding. I was like, what if he doesn't talk to us? That was my biggest fear. And Angela was standing on the left of me and I was like, because I was really eyeing up what was going on, because you could only hear what she was saying. Not
they were
the phones. Yeah, and glass. And I'm like, he ain't gonna talk to us. And I'm thinking, should I just go grab that phone from out of her hand right now and be like, hey, just let me say what I need to say. I'm like, what's my next step if he doesn't want to? So I heard her say, Dad, they don't think that you did this. Or she said, Dad, they want answers just like I want answers whenever we were. Yeah, and I don't think they think that you did this, or something like that. So when we started talking, it was really strange because I was so nervous, but yet so excited. And we had been waiting for this day for so long. But then when you're face to face, nothing in my body, my soul told me he did it. Mm-hmm. No. I had 3 pages of questions and I started talking to him first and I'm like, I'm in detective mode at this point, and I'm like, do you recognize this man? We were like holding pictures up, or I was holding pictures up and she was drilling him like a drill sergeant. Okay, I know I don't have much time. Let's just do this. Let's do this. And let's get answers, as fast as we can. But it was, we were so exhausted. Yeah.
That was not the man I hit. That's what David said. And that's why he pleaded innocent. That's why he didn't say it was self-defense. He didn't even think he hit Jimmy Wade at all. If what he is saying is true, how relieved he must have been. And yet there he was in jail, arrested for a crime that he didn't commit, even accidentally. I talked to Mariah too, and she is exactly as the twins described.
My name is Mariah. I am David Brian White's daughter. I had been searching for my dad. He was in prison on and off pretty much my whole life. I lived with my grandparents. And whenever I turned 18, I decided I was going to go look for him. And the same day that I went looking for him, he actually found me. And we met up that evening at like 9 o'clock, and we ended up talking until 2 o'clock in the morning. And he told me about, hold on. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
He told me about that, the case, that night. I want to say it was either that night or the very next day, because I had asked him, I'm like, give me all the reasons why you haven't been able to be a part of my life. I want to know all of the answers, because I've been left in the dark pretty much my whole life. And that was one of the things that he told me, was that he dealt with a murder case that he did not do, and that it was a very confusing situation, and that apparently nobody got justice for anything. And I didn't really hear that much about it after that for a while, until I got to sit down and meet my grandma and talk to my grandma. And she told me his whole side of the story.
Did you and him ever, other than the first time you met, you said that he had mentioned the murder charge. In the years following, did you guys have any conversations about that, about Jimmy's murder?
I mean, a little bit. He never really talked to me much about it. It always made him very upset. It would kind of, I don't know if it was very triggering and kind of traumatizing to him.
Tell me about meeting Andrea and Angela, what that was like, and how that came about.
My Aunt Teresa messaged me and was like, hey, some lady is talking to me about your dad. I was like, okay. She's like, she wants to meet him. I was like, oh? Well, does she know that he's currently in jail? And she was like, yeah, I'm just going to give you her information and you can talk to her. I was like, okay. So I messaged her and I was just like, hey, I messaged Andrea and I was like, hey, my dad's David. And she was like, can you give me a call? And gave me her number. So I called her, and instantly we started making plans. From the moment I got on the phone, we started making plans on that Saturday, going and seeing my dad on a visit and being able to sit down and talk to him. And so that Saturday we met up there, and I mean, it was like we had been friends our whole lives. Our friendship just instantly went, and we had a good time. We ended up going out to eat afterwards. She got some questions that she had and her sister had personally answered by him as much as he could talk right then. And and then afterwards we went out and we had lunch together and all got to hang out and kind of talk over like the big binder that they have and all of their information that they already have compared to what I could possibly give to them.
Sure.
And I thought, because I have a bunch of my dad's totes that are full of like letters from my mom from whenever he was locked up back from 1989 to 2001. I have a bunch of letters from my mom to him. And I was like, maybe I also have some documents, and maybe those documents could be for the case. And so they ended up coming over to my house that night and they helped me go through all of my mom's letters and kind of compare names. And, yeah, I mean, it was instant. We just all clicked and got along, and now we talk to each other like weekly and just check in and give updates on our crazy lives.
Right. So when you think your dad thought when you introduced the girls?
He was very nervous. He was very nervous because in his eyes, you know, everybody's after him. Everybody doesn't like him, you know, and he was scared they thought he did it whenever he knows deep down he didn't. And so was nerve wracking to just kind of throw on him because I hadn't talked to him before I went to go to the visit at all. So he had no idea they were coming. So it was kind of a surprise. So like I sat down and I was like, hey Dad, so Jimmy Martin, remember him? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, these are his kids. And he's like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, surprise! They want to talk to you. Don't worry, everything's okay. And he's like, well, I don't know what they're wanting to talk to me about. What do they want to talk to me about? And I was like, well, listen, there's a lot going on right now, and it's really big, and they just want your help. And he was like, okay, well, I'll try, but I don't know. I was like, it's okay, Dad, just trust me on it. And he was like, I trust you, baby. I was like, okay. And he is very good about being honest with me, and being genuine with me all the time. And
Right, SRB. That's exactly what I was thinking too. I'm thinking, I don't know if I would have met with these girls. I mean, I would have just been scared, like, ugh, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to pin this on me? Something, but it actually turned out for the good. But I can't imagine why he met with them. I'm thankful he did. But I guess, if you know you're innocent, why not? I guess.
and letting me see his raw. He's very rough around the edges, and he doesn't trust just anybody. He always made sure to be like, hey, listen, I just want to tell you, like, no matter what you hear, you have to trust me. You need to trust me. You need to understand, like, I am not this bad guy. And I'm just like, Dad, I know. Like, I know you're not this bad guy. And so, yeah, and it ended up being a good visit.
Letting me see his raw, she said. Mariah, his long-lost daughter. Is David Bryan White a good actor? Or is he self-deluded? Mariah believes him. It has been over 30 years, and David Bryan White still maintains that he did not hit Jimmy Wade.
So the story that we understood was there was my Uncle Marty was actually taking his girlfriend home that night, and he went by the bar in Von Terre, and he said there was probably 50 people fighting. There was fights everywhere, and he was trying to describe it, and I'm like a riot? He was like, yeah. He goes, it was crazy. So he, went on home. And so from what reading the newspapers and the police reports, that David White was walking by because he was at his brother's house and he was walking to his mother's house.
He just got out of prison. Mm-hmm. He was young. He was from Fredericktown or Potosi or somewhere like that. And then he had just gotten out of prison and he was going to stay with his mom because that was I guess where he was going to go. And so he didn't really know anybody. He was just walking.
So David White come up on someone getting beat up and he said, I think he's had enough. And he said, next thing I know, 3 guys are chasing me. One of them had a baseball bat. So it was, up the street and around the corner where it took place. And David White said he was running. And whenever there's a ledge, like the sidewalk had a ledge, and he jumped up on the ledge and he fell down. And he said they were coming at me. And he didn't know any of these men who were chasing him. He just said one of them had a baseball bat. So he picked up the landscaping timber from the yard, and he said he held it out and just started going in circles. And he hit someone.
He said circles and kind of like a side-to-side motion.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I was going to say a while ago about the autopsy. Just some of it just didn't make sense, but go ahead.
So he said it was too heavy to pick up. He said it was.
He could only swing it.
He could only swing it. He couldn't go, the motion going above your head. He could only go because it was so heavy. It was a landscaping timber that was like 4 foot long. So he said he hit someone
and he dropped it. He looked over the person because he didn't know their condition. And even in the police report, it says that he glanced at the person and thought, oh no, he's hurt, and ran home.
As we investigated more and more and what the evidence was leading us to, my first interaction with him was nothing like I imagined.
Did you ask him if he did it?
Oh, yes.
You asked David Brian White? And what did he say?
He said, whenever I picked up that timber, I did not pick it up to kill somebody. I picked it up to get him off me. I said, okay, how are you swinging it? Because we'd already studied the coroner's report, the right, and we got Jim Copeland, and that we hadn't got the preliminary hearing yet, right? Because it was confirmed then that the one that was kind of like right here, up, what do you call that? Like the vertical. Yeah, that one. It wasn't confirmed, but that's why we got it re-looked at, because it didn't make any sense. To me, I didn't feel like.
Right.
That's why we got the second opinion. So I said, are you sure you did not swing this over your head and down? He said, no, I couldn't even pick it up. He said it was 4 feet long. It was heavy. And my main goal was not to hit someone to kill them or hurt them. I just wanted them off of me. And I could, whenever we went to where it happened, there was like a sidewalk stepped up. So I knew exactly what he was talking about when he said that he tripped up. And I left there with like a piece of, I think we've always wondered why he was brought into why his name was mentioned or why he admitted it. But then once you hear the real story or where the evidence leads you, I left there at peace knowing that he didn't do it. Mm-hmm. It was just like, it's been confirmed. Yeah. That, David White was not a part of this. He was a part of a fight, but not a part of that fight.
I listened to the twins and to Mariah, and I think they could be right. That David didn't do it. Or at least that David doesn't want to have done it so badly that he's convinced himself that he didn't do it. And then I think about what Dr. Zarakor said. That the evidence suggested that someone hit Jimmy Wade from behind, knocked him out, and while he was out, hit him on the forehead 3 more times. The point is that the evidence doesn't match with David's story of self-defense. I also think about how the twins point out how difficult it would be to hit someone, even someone who is standing still, in the same place 3 times.
Him that day because he was supposed to come and get us the next day on Saturday. And on Friday night, he's like, what are you guys doing? And I told him we are going to stay the night at Jamie, our friend's house, and going to the football game and staying the night with her. And we are sleeping out in her camper for her birthday. And I remember whenever we got a phone, he's like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. I love you girls. And, we were like, we love you too. And, I don't remember what part of the day that was. It's kind of a blur, some of it, but then I know he went to my grandma's because he was staying there at the time, and he got cleaned up to go out, and that's when he saw Aunt Dodie or whatever. They were both living at grandma's. And then as far as I know, he just went out that night.
The events that we have is your dad went to work, he came home, then he went to a bar, presumably with nothing going on particularly to be scared of in his life. Mm-hmm. And then this David Bryan White, who just got into town and just got out of jail or prison, comes walking through town and beats somebody he doesn't know to death. That's the official narrative. And, whether you think it adds up or not, I think people can form their opinions, but it definitely seems odd, I think.
Yes. There's no motive. He had zero motive. He didn't even know who my dad was. And I know things can happen and things can get out of hand if there's a fight. But a lot more people had motive. Tim Anderson's statement, he says he heard Jimmy had insurance settlement, and that was a rumor. That was, my mom had that insurance money, but people thought he had insurance money. So that's one motive. But we know of a few other motives that David Bryan White did not have a single motive.
Do you think that the potential insurance money had anything to do with it?
I do. I do.
So what do you guys think so far? You guys think he did it? I mean, it's kind of odd either way. I mean, one, the David guy thought he did it. He tells the police he thinks he did it. Then the twins talk to him and realize, hey, maybe this guy isn't the guy that did it. I mean, I don't know. At this point, not knowing that they have an arrest, I would think he's not the guy. But is he lying to get out of trouble? Because if he passed out at the thought that he hurt someone, is he now lying, thinking he could get out if he did do it? Right? Do you guys feel that way?
Along with a few other reasons. There were several motives and they got him alone. David White had no motive. Other people had not just one motive, but several. Okay. And why would Shane Hill chase David White if he just broke him up from a fight and pretty much saved him?
Right.
Why would he be like, oh, let me help you. Oh, now you're going to chase me? I don't think that happened.
Right.
And also in the police report, it states that it doesn't say what fight, because there was a few fights that night. There was one over by Allen Street by Dr. What was that doctor's name? Peratt. Yeah. So there was a fight, my dad's fight. There was a fight by Dr. Peratt's office. So in the police report, it says, okay, so Shane Hill was wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans. They saw a man fitting that description on their way to the fight. But it doesn't specify which fight. So if they're referring to the fight that my dad was in, I don't think Shane was a part of it. I think he got beat up. He was on the ground and he started heading home.
So we know now from the episode that you guys have talked to David Bryan White and he's currently incarcerated. When was the first time that you guys got in contact with him? You don't have to tell me the whole story, but when was that?
August of 2020. Is that right? August or September? I think it was August.
So that was right before the podcast started.
Right before. Like a couple months. Because whenever we last talked to Sean, he had no idea all the things that had transpired since our last conversation. And that was kind of a big one that had transpired about probably just a few weeks before the podcast. Mm-hmm.
So, and you guys don't think that David Bryan White, or I should say, do you guys think that David Bryan White killed your dad?
I don't think he killed him. Is it possible he hit him? That's a possibility. Did he kill him? No. I agree. And I think the reason why is because, several. But I think he was trying to defend himself. And whenever he jumped up on that ledge, he felt definitely threatened. And I don't know, and he even says, and I take what he says with a grain of salt, but that he was trying to get away from people chasing him. He wasn't killing someone. And I think that he swung several times, not even swung. I don't know.
The 4x4, the landscape timber.
the landscaping timber.
Yeah.
And I believe him whenever he says that he's swinging it around in circles, because that's pretty much that's, in my opinion, the only way you can defend yourself with a 4x4.
Well, especially at 140, 150 pounds.
Yes. And I think he was just trying to defend himself and he hit somebody. And I think the reason why the charges were dismissed is because the evidence did not prove his guilt.
So the landscape timber that was found 40 something feet from his body with the dark colored hair and the blood, there had to have been something that came from it, whether it was DNA. I don't think they would have had DNA at the time, but they would have had blood type.
Blood type. Yeah. And
something had to have happened with that. And
I think
what information do you have about that?
I think 3 days before the trial, I think they had banked on that. That was their smoking gun. We're going to get him. He did it. He's already been locked up for 3 years. I feel like they had tunnel vision and didn't really look into anyone else because he had admitted it. He, was arrested for it, and they thought, slam dunk, this is it, until they got that back. I mean, they were so focused on David Brian White that even whenever the results come back inconclusive, that it was not my dad's blood, not my dad's hair, not David White's blood, not David Brian White's hair.
All right. So going back to our Tom Anderson and his story, and in the statement that he gave to the police, he kept saying that David Brian White had stated that he was in a cult or that he was really wanting to get in a fight that night. What do you think that's all about?
I'm not really sure on that one, but he's not violent. His past, his record is drug related. He does not have a violent history.
Right.
And I think that no motive, no violent history, self-defense. That's what I think, all of his charges from past are drug related. And if they were doing drugs that night, hard telling what he said. If he was a violent criminal, I think we would be having a different discussion.
Right.
In David Brian White's, in one of the conversations with him, he told a story about your dad coming to him in a dream. Can you tell me about that?
Mm-hmm. It was actually the first time that I talked to him, actually on the phone, not in person, but on the phone, because whenever we talked to him, he was in jail, and then he went to the prison after that. So when we talked to him, it was the first time I talked to him while he was in the prison. He said, nobody believed me about this, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you. He said, I had a dream about your dad. I said, really? I said, what was it? And he said, he came to me in a dream 2 days before I was released and said, everything's going to be okay. He said he was right because I got released 2 days after that.
Wow. So yeah, and obviously we're in the studio today because some things have changed in the case. There's big things happening that we know about that we can't necessarily share. We're all trying to do our due diligence before we put anything out there. We don't want to jeopardize anything that could happen in the future. But talking about the podcast, how's that been for you as the podcasts have been released? What's been the feeling around town? Have people contacted you? Are people asking you questions?
Yeah. It's crazy because as soon as one comes out, I'll get, actually the first time the first one came up, I don't know how many messages I had because my phone was kind of acting kooky before this, but my phone definitely quit, and it was a joke that I had so many messages and texts that my phone blew up, which it did quit working. But I've gotten so many, and people will be like, I didn't remember. I don't know how many messages I've gotten. I didn't ever think about this until I heard the podcast. It made me remember something. I mean, I've gotten several messages like that. It was overwhelming at first, all the messages and people I haven't heard from for so long. Hey, we're supporting you. I don't know about Angela, but I've gotten tons of messages stating like they were sorry that they never knew that we had been through something like this. And, how could I've known you my whole life and never knew that you guys were going through this? But it's something we just did our thing. And yeah, I think it's something that we really didn't
indulge in much.
Yeah. Like,
Just did it.
mm-hmm. Like, I don't even really think some of my closest friends knew that her and I would be digging through the book or the Jimmy Bible on a Saturday night, or making phone calls or stalking. We've really gotten good at stalking. Like, and also, I got a message from Chris's mom, and it was just hearing from family I haven't heard from in a long time. And it just really opened your eyes to like how many people were affected and like support us. And, Chris's mom said, I just really got to thinking she had, 2 kids and lived in another state and she wasn't here. And she said, I just feel like I wasn't there for you. And it was like, I think people just hearing the podcast, it's more than just the twins' dad got murdered. No one has served justice for this. And we're the ones doing the investigation for the last 13 years. Biggest thing that I've gotten feedback from is, when is the next one?
Yes.
That's definitely, oh my gosh, cliffhanger. Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of that as well, and we're running so hard trying to get these put out, but also to, like I said, do our due diligence and make sure that everything we put out is correct,
Right.
and doesn't jeopardize anything that could happen in the future.
Right.
So what are some of the questions that you guys have been getting? I know one that I've gotten is, if the person that killed your dad is not David Brian White, then they are potentially still out in, among regular people, and obviously they're capable of killing. Are you girls scared? Are you fearful of anyone coming after you?
No.
I don't know why. I'm just
It's
not.
because we're Martins and they should be scared of us.
That's right.
we
That's
have,
right. That's right.
We are equipped with a lot of information. Yeah. We have gotten so much information, they should be scared of us.
Yep.
Honestly.
What do your husbands think about the podcast?
These girls are not lying. I mean, when I say they were on this case, like they were on it, like 2 trained investigators. They got to the bottom of it. And you have to respect that. I mean, they just didn't give up. They refused to. And they've actually gotten somewhere. And I'm so thankful. In these small towns, that's really hard to get. Honest.
Podcast, are they scared for you, or how do your husbands feel about the podcast?
Actually, I have a gun. My husband got me. Not that he's scared, but I'm not scared to pack. But he is so supportive. I mean, there's been times he's like, it'd be nice outside. Let's go do something. And he'll come out and I'll be on the deck with paper scattered everywhere. And I'm like, well, he's like, I see you're busy. So he is very, very supportive. He's probably, I don't know how many times I've been let down, and he's kind of like gives me the positive vibe that I need. Like, hey, look how many times you've been let down. It can only get better from here. I don't know. He's always got these little
Things to pick you up.
Yes, he's always my pick me up. He's always very, very supportive. Same for me. Like, no matter what we have planned, if something of the podcast comes up, or
It's just working.
yeah, I mean, he knows it takes precedent over everything. And like, after I listen to a podcast, are you okay? Because it's very emotional.
Sometimes it's like ripping the Band-Aid off again.
Yes. And one day I'm like, why do I feel 12 again? Like, you just emotionally go back to that dark space for a little bit. And, you know, I think
Both of our husbands are very supportive.
yeah. And they know twin time
Yeah, they get
because
it.
we have a lot of it. Yeah.
Well, Andrea and Angela, I want to thank you guys for coming in here and talking to me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and really appreciate all the work you guys have done. And I hope that Small Town Forgotten is playing a big part in this. And we are here to let you know that you're not alone anymore. And we're here with you, and we're in it for the long haul, whatever that may be.
Okay, so that one was only 5, and we have 3 more. So do we want to do one more and then tomorrow finish up the last 2? Or do you guys just want to do the 3 tomorrow? It's up to you. Anybody? One more? Okay.
The face off of innocent parents far and wide?
Well, some of that was scary, some of it was false, and all of it is covered in our podcast, Talk Bitcoin to Me.
We slow it down and make it unscary, and dare we say, sex.
Cooperating with law enforcement, will we be able to get there? I'm sure you can see that it's a delicate balance. What if we said something or revealed something that would jeopardize the case that they are building against the person or persons responsible for Jimmy Wade's death? And yet, what about all of the people who have already come forward and the people who are close to coming forward? We need to keep telling this story, if only to make sure that those people know that they are not alone. Melissa Gilliam, the St. Francis County prosecuting attorney, was gracious enough to talk to me over the phone about the press release and the next steps for law enforcement.
Melissa Gilliam. I'm the St. Francis County prosecuting attorney.
Well, again, thank you for doing this. I just want you to know that we really appreciate it. We see the work that you and your team and the Highway Patrol and the county are putting into it. And I feel like more's been done just in the past couple weeks than was in the past few decades. So I really appreciate you talking to me.
No problem.
First thing, I guess, is thank you for putting out the statement yesterday. The press release was great. Can you kind of share some information with me, I guess, what led up to releasing that press release?
So we have been meeting regularly since the decision was made to start looking at the information that you guys gathered and presented to the Missouri State Highway Patrol. So we kind of gathered up the information we had here from, like you said, 30 years ago. The filings, we had to go print off documents from microfilm. We ended up sharing all the information that the agencies had and discussed ways to organize the investigation going forward. So during the course of the last couple of weeks, the members of the Missouri State Highway Patrol and then the members of the St. Francis County Sheriff's Department had begun the investigation, talking to people and doing various investigation items that were on their list. And so when that on Thursday, we decided that now would be an ideal time to make the information public. The investigation is ongoing again. And to also seek any additional information that folks might have about the case that otherwise we wouldn't know about without putting a statement out there. So the idea is to welcome anyone who may have been a witness or has any information to come forward and report that to either the Missouri State Highway Patrol or the St. Francis County Sheriff's Department.
Was this even on your radar? Do you hear about 30-year-old murder cases?
Well, you know, all of us at some point have watched the ID channel or Dateline or, Cold Case Files. So clearly it's something that technology has progressed in the last 30 years. And it's always possible that when cases of this nature reopen, these new technologies could be utilized to assist investigators in solving what previously was an unsolved case. It was brought to my attention by someone who mentioned the podcast. So I tuned in and listened to the podcast. And then ultimately received a call from Donnie Crump at the Missouri State Highway Patrol, who had spoken to a member of your team, indicated that there may actually be new evidence available for them to investigate. And so we decided to sit down and talk about it. And it wasn't, a difficult decision because obviously there is no statute of limitations for murder. So if we're able to determine the suspect and new information and new evidence can lead to a conviction, then it's our duty to follow up with that and look into it. So, I don't have anything to do with the investigation part other than to be here to lend anything we can legally as far as subpoenas or search warrants go. They are much more experienced in investigation and going out and interviewing the folks. We just kind of sit back here and help on the legal end of things.
Do you and the investigators feel confident that there's something to go on? I would assume you do, or you wouldn't have put out the press release.
Well, obviously in any investigation, we have to look and turn over every stone that we can. So, there are strategies and tactics in investigation, and that, is clearly something that the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the St. Francis County Sheriff's Department, they decide on. They just basically asked me at this point to make the information public so further information could be gathered. In any case, like if new information is available, it should be looked at and investigated, I guess you can say. And that is what they're doing. And I think you have some amazing investigators who are putting the legwork in at this point in time.
Yeah, and we've seen that as well. Every conversation that we've had with the Highway Patrol, they've been fantastic at returning phone calls and really putting in the work. How do you see the case moving forward from here? I know you said that you weren't actually a part of the investigation, but I'm sure you have been in touch with them. Where does it go from here? Do they have active leads that they're going to be pursuing, or are they looking for information to come in? How does it move forward?
It's both. Obviously they're looking for information to come in. Sometimes there are things that people don't realize is a valuable tip for investigators that actually turns out to be. So any information that folks have is welcomed. But it just the way that it goes from here is they continue the investigation. They find out what, if any, evidence can be adduced, and then if there's any way that we can utilize technology and if there's going to be any kind of DNA analysis or anything that we can do that would help us have evidence to present in a court of law to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person is guilty. That's really what they're looking for, is information that is going to be presented in court to.
All right. So I think we know what a prosecutor does. We can go, she pretty much just tells us what we already know. She doesn't really go into any kind of detail, just that she can't tell you anything. So that's just about it. This whole thing has just been her going around, beating around the bush. We can't tell you anything, but let me carry on this conversation so you're satisfied at the end of it and I can hang this phone up. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go to the next one, and then we'll save the last one for tomorrow just to keep you on your toes, and because, well, it's going to be 8 o'clock before we know it. So let me go to the next one. and we'll just kind of go from there. It's really interesting. It's such an interesting case. Like, you want to finish it all, but I don't know. I kind of want to wait for the very last one for tomorrow because it's the best one. It really is. Well, if I can find the next one. Oh, we'll have 2 for tomorrow. So that actually works out great.
October, Friday the 13th, 1989, Jimmy Wade Martin's body was found on a street in the small town of Bonne Terre, Missouri. When there are witnesses, a murder weapon, and a taped confession, how exactly does a murder become a cold case?
It started at that little bar.
This case is not ended by any stretch of the imagination.
A lot of people in that town's not going to.
Rumor has it was
big brawl, big bar fight.
County Jail.
We have been working so hard on this.
I can't be silent anymore. You know, like.
You know that guy that got killed here last night?
There was rumors going around like the next
We
day.
started doing a lot with Facebook.
The question is, what happened to Jimmy Wade Martin?
From Blueburn Productions, this is Small Town Forgotten. I'm your host, Chris Hulsey.
I want them to know that I didn't do this, and I want them to believe this in their heart, know without a doubt, and whatever I can do to help them know this, I'm going to.
Thanks to the St. Francis County prosecutor's press release and the subsequent news coverage, like St. Louis's Fox 2 News, Yahoo, MSN, and various national news outlets, our listening audience has jumped to twice what it was formerly. And with that jump, of course, we've received more questions and comments, a lot of them pertaining to David Brian White specifically. Is he still a suspect? Does he know who did it? Why is he in prison now? In December, the twins were able to play the first episode of the podcast for David, and then I had an opportunity to interview him myself.
I'm glad you got to hear it.
Huh?
I said, I'm glad you got to hear it. Me and Mariah were trying to figure out a way because
This call is
like,
from a correctional
there were
facility
stamps
and
for
may
every
be
30
monitored
seconds.
and recorded.
So how much more time do you have?
I still got like 35 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm going to introduce you to my cousin Chris, okay? He's the voice of the podcast. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to put him on.
Hello, David.
Hello, Chris.
Hi. Wow, it's surreal to be talking to you.
Very.
How, what did you think about the podcast? I know it's probably,
I like.
you liked it?
I like. Yes, I did.
I first off, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you talking to me. Honestly, that's
Well, you don't have to say. I've been waiting for this and hoping for this for years.
I really appreciate you being willing to talk and help us out.
It's no problem. That's not a problem at all. It's it's been a long time in coming. And, I'm like I said, what it's been rough. All these years it's been rough. Because it's like, why won't they do nothing? And they just keep coming, at me. And why won't they go for the truth? Like the tall guy. Who is this tall guy? And there's so much other things,
Yeah,
there's this
absolutely.
tall guy that they see from seeing and stuff. And just, I was 24 years old when this happened. I'm 56 now, and I was a scared to death kid. I was scared to death. They were, but it wasn't. I heard where they said that it was Jimmy that came from the bar that night, and it wasn't. He wasn't chasing me.
This call
I
is
didn't
from a
see
correctional
him
facility and may
know-
be monitored and recorded.
even know that until I went to my preliminary hearing and I stood up and turned around to the family members and told them that is not the person that I hit, and my attorney told me to shut up. But the ones that was chasing me was a guy that I later found out was a guy and a guy named
How did you find that out?
I didn't know from my attorney.
Okay. Were you involved in a fight that night at all, other than that specific
I tried
incident?
to stop them from beating on one guy. I tried to stop them three from beating on one guy. And I didn't know none of these people, didn't know none of their names till all this happened. And then whenever I tried to stop them from beating on him, that's when they all came chasing after me.
So the people were beating on.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you name? Did you know any of the people that were there that night?
I didn't know. No, I didn't know anybody. I was only in town for 14 hours when they came and arrested me.
And what were you in town for?
Visiting my mom, bringing my son down to visit my mom.
Okay. And so
I was actually born in Bonterra.
Okay. Can you kind of talk me through? So you were walking by, there was a fight going on. You attempted to break it up. What happened after that, to the best of your recollection?
Oh, and all hell just broke loose. They just come at me with, all kinds of weapons, and I just ran, and until I fell down. Man, there's so much more to it, and see, it's like the tall guy. I knew that. My attorney told me that
This call is from a correctional facility and may be monitored and recorded.
That left from the scene, and this tall guy leaped from the scene or whatever, and went underneath the street light. That's really all I know. I've been pretty much kept in the dark on everything. It just seems like that's how everybody wants it.
Had you ever met Jimmy? Ever?
Never in life.
Did you, after seeing a photo of him, did you see him that night at all?
No.
You did not see him at all. So
that's when I stood up in the courtroom. I stood up in the courtroom in my preliminary hearing, and I turned around. I'm assuming it was family members of Jimmy, and I turned around and I told them, that is not the man I hit. And my attorney told me to shut up, and then I went back to jail. I said it again, and they took me back to jail. Kept me in jail all that time. I seen some pretty gory stuff there. With a guy named hanging himself right next to me. I woke up and found him. Just all kinds of crazy stuff, and it's been bad. It's been bad.
David, why was your case dismissed, to your knowledge?
All I know is they came to me and they drew blood from me, and after the DNA came back, they said if DNA comes back, what we believe will come back, we're going to release you today. And I said, okay, let's do it. And they took my DNA, and that was it. That's all I know.
And then you were released after that?
I was released right after that.
Did you see, or did you have any names of any witnesses that were involved?
No.
No,
I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know anybody there.
So you had you didn't know a single person. You didn't hear of any witness testimonies. Did anybody implicate you other than yourself that night or that next day? Did anybody implicate you in the crime?
I have no idea if anybody did or not. I think the only one that was implicated was the guy that they seen go underneath the light. It's the only ones that I have any idea that were involved in something that bad. I mean, that was bad. That was bad. It had to be personal. In my opinion, it had to be personal.
I agree. Tell me about, and I've talked to Andrea and Angela about this too. What was it like the first time you met Andrea and Angela.
It was all I thought it was awesome, and they because for them to even listen to anything that I had to say, that that was a blessing. That was a blessing. I don't care what anybody says. I just got hit by an 18-wheeler on my motorcycle in Waco, Texas, in March 31st, and I've been wondering why it didn't kill me. And then whenever I met the girls, I was like, well, maybe this is why. And thank you, because I want them to know that I didn't do this, and I want them to believe this in their heart, and know without a doubt, and whatever I can do to help them. That's my, maybe that's why I was kept alive. Maybe that's why God let me live through that. I don't know, but I'm like I said, I pretty gory thing in my life, and throughout all this, and experienced really crazy things, and I, knowing that I'm innocent, and I believe that our visit went well. I thought they were very good kids, and I think Jimmy would be very, very proud of them. Like I said, I don't know him either, but I know if they were my daughters and I was their father, I would be damn proud of them.
I agree with you.
Bless their heart.
David, I'm going to ask you another question, and I mean, I think you've already answered it, but I want to ask you: did you kill Jimmy Wade Martin?
No, I did not. No, I did not. Most definitely not. Yeah, that's one of the things that really, that this is such a blessing for, because it's, I'm pretty sick and I'm surrounded by this coronavirus here, so I might not make it out of here. And if I die and they know that I'm innocent of this, that is, it's going to be a great blessing to me. I can die peacefully.
Okay. I want to ask specifically about, so you had swung a timber or a board or something and did hit somebody, and you were under the impression that possibly it was what? There's several reports. Was it a landscape timber? Was it a 4x4? Was it a 2x4? Because
it was a 4x4 piece of landscape timber.
Okay, so it was
when
like
they were chasing me, I fell down and it was there.
So it was like a 4x4 that was rounded off on the sharp corners. So it was a landscape timber, like that you would put mulch in.
Yeah, it would have put.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I think you put mulch in. You didn't do that.
And it was just laying on the ground, or you pulled it out of some landscaping, or?
No, it was laying on the ground. It was laying on the ground where I fell.
Okay.
And there was no running after that. There was no running. I was surrounded by the three of them, and there was no running from that.
I think you had said something about a baseball bat.
Yes.
Yes. So who had a baseball bat, or what do you remember about a ball bat?
He had the baseball bat. The big guy, the great big guy.
Had the baseball
But he
bat.
was big to me back then. He was big to me. Like I said, I was only 24-year-old.
And he was chasing
He
you.
was big. Yeah, and he was chasing me. Him and the two others. And he kept trying to hit me with that baseball bat. And that one that jumped in at me and got hit with the stick.
How has that specific night affected your life over the last 31 years?
Oh my God! It's still affecting my life. It's still affecting my life.
What?
And I've seen and experienced a lot of things that people should have to see, or nightmarish stuff. It's just that alone has been a nightmare, heart wrenching, And I've thought about the girls ever since. I thought they were 13 years old when this happened. I think that's what the newspaper back then said, and I felt so for them, because I had kids back then too, and I can't imagine what my kids would have thought or felt. And my kids have had to live it for the 31 years too, of losing their father, and my daughter in contact with Andrea and Angel has also had to live without her father and lost her mother in 2001. So yeah, it's been a miserable life. I know what they're going through. I feel so for them. Again, it's just a blessing, and I'm glad that I believe that I had some angels that looked over me, and I believe that Jimmy's one of them, and I believe that in my heart, and I believe he's been looking over me all these years and protecting me all these years, and I believe I was free from the beginning because of him, and I don't care what anybody says or thinks about that or feels about that. I believe that he's an angel, and I believe that he is protecting me and looking over me for all these years. People thought I was crazy whenever they dismissed them charges because I had a dream one night, and I told my mom about this, and I told James Kellogg and Junior Kellogg and Rosemary Kellogg when they came to pick me up from the jail. When they were taking me there, I said it's going to be okay. That Jimmy came to me in my dreams, told me that it was going to be okay, and I'm going to be released. And they all thought I was crazy. And then when I was released, I was like, I told you. And I believe, I think that Jimmy's got a lot to do with us getting together and trying to work together and make and get this fixed.
Well, my hope is that we can use all of us together, and you especially, since you were the only one that was even there that night, to get something figured out on this case and get some closure for Andrea and Angela. That's the goal of all this.
Exactly. This is meant to happen.
What's up, True Crime Podcast listener? Hope you're enjoying Small Town.
Once they had looked at the evidence themselves, they seemed to have come to the same conclusion. They told us that what would be helpful in eliminating David as a suspect altogether would be to have him agree to take a polygraph test. David Brian White passes the polygraph, and law enforcement can move past David Brian White. So we asked him, and he said yes. And then he said no. At the most pivotal moment in the investigation, David Brian White reneged. David has been in and out of prison since his early 20s. As he said, he's in his 50s now. Even if you don't know anyone who has had that life experience, it's almost a stereotype on TV. The prisoner or ex-con who distrusts law enforcement. But David Brian White, an individual who served at least 3 years for a crime he didn't commit, he has even more reason to distrust the system in any form. He said yes to the twins and myself, but once the Highway Patrol was involved with him directly, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Yes, I know it looks suspicious. That he would now refuse what he promised he would do, but I understand. I really do. He's scared. He knows he didn't do it. I think he even believes that we don't think he did it. But how can he trust the system that put him in jail in the first place? The twins were frustrated and surprised. They felt the need to talk to him again, reminding him of the goal, asking him to have faith.
This call is from a correctional facility and may be monitored and recorded.
He really didn't feel.
Yeah, Chris, tomorrow, whenever we do the last 2 episodes, one of them is like a walkthrough of the twins going in that area, and it will show you the whole area, like the streets and where he was found. I kind of saved that for the very end so that once you can imagine as we listen to this, like you imagine this town in your mind. So then I kind of thought at the end of it, I would show you, and see if what you kind of picture is what you see.
Just send me a copy of the Daily Journal of what it said anyway.
Yeah.
That's about it. Hoping you guys can tell me a little something.
I mean, they've been investigating and talking to different people and things like that, but
Oh no, SRB. Can you guys see the picture okay, or is it just SRB? Oh, okay. All right. SRB, you might have to go back out and come back in. I don't know.
I mean, me and Angela's just hoping something will happen soon. I don't know.
If they haven't gave us any kind of timeline or anything like that, when they might, or anybody who they've been talking to or anything?
Just people that were possibly there that night.
Chris said they was talking to a lot of different people who've been coming forward, which is awesome, you know?
Yeah.
But they really haven't said too much, man. It still got me a little shaky.
They're working with us, and so I know they don't think that, it was you. So I don't know where that's coming from, but the thing of it is, like, without you, it's going to be hard.
Yeah,
I feel like if you were on our side, it would be better for us, right. if you cooperated with them, that way they could get to the truth. And I feel like they would have a stronger case if they had you on our side,
Okay, what do they want me to do? Do you know?
Well, I know they were just gonna get a polygraph, and then that way they could rule you out, and then they would have better hold on the investigation as far as going after other people once they prove that that you passed the lie detector test. And like I was telling Chris, I said, even if he did hit him, it was self-defense.
This call is from a correctional facility and may be monitored and recorded.
All they need is to get you out of the way so they could go full steam ahead. And it's like a roadblock right now. Everything that we thought is being confirmed. So, my dad had no defensive wounds, and the pathologist said he thinks he was struck from behind. And if you were going in circles with it, he would have defensive wounds. So he said, I think he didn't see it coming. So everything that we've uncovered does not point to you. And the cops, they realize that. And, this is the furthest we've ever gotten. And it's so close.
They're supposed to be bringing visitation back up. You had visits if you guys could come up. I'm going to go tomorrow and ask a caseworker tomorrow for a couple visiting farms. If you want me to, and then I'll send them to you. That way, it'd be easier and stuff like that for us to talk, whatever. But
and I know
more time.
I know that, I try to put myself in your shoes and think about, not only, we all suffered from this. You sat in jail for 3 years. And I think that, they're just so close.
Do you know who is?
Yes.
Who is? Man, I've heard that name. I mean, I've been through a whole lot. I've had a lot of injuries over the years, and the name just sounds so familiar. I don't know why, but it does. I'll never forget it. I mean, I still see that in my night. I still have nightmares over it, and I still see his face today. Like he was standing right in front of me.
Mm-hmm. I promise that they're not going for you. I can promise you that.
Mm-hmm. We have given them enough.
I don't see how they could, but then again, I don't. They have already won. I'm gonna try to get a hold of my attorney this week. I'm gonna make, because I really want to take that polygraph. I really, I don't see what it could hurt. More, I wish I was talking to you in person. Because I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not just scared of the police. I'm scared of the people around too. You understand what I'm saying? Because I don't want, man. I don't want the same thing end up happening to me too.
We are so close, and if you could just work with us, it would mean the world to us. And not only that, it would help the case out so much. And you have my word. I promise you.
That's why I'm at, Andrew. It's just like I told them. Before I die, if there's anything that I want to do more, it's to help you guys with this. And that's if I can do that before I die, I'll feel good about myself. You know what I mean?
I sometimes feel like
say there's one thing I've done right in my life, other than make beautiful babies, and that's to help you guys with this.
Well, and whenever you do right, good comes to you.
Right. And I believe that. And I believe I'm protected. I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe that I'm protected. I know God is on my side. He's been on my side all these years. And He's got me through this all the way through this all these years. And I believe He's brought us together for a reason. And that reason is, to help. And I feel I'm
calls from a correctional facility and may be monitored and recorded.
I'm be honest, I'm scared. I want to help, but I'm scared.
I understand.
I'm scared. I'm scared to death. And
Chris, I'm not real sure, Chris. I know he's had a record since he was 20, but I know he spent most of his life in prison. So I'm not real sure what all he has in his background, but I can look into it for you and send it to you.
It would mean a lot because, we worked so hard to get to where we are. And I just want justice for him so bad. And we're close. We really are.
Just count me in. We're going to make it happen one way or the other, somehow, some way. We're going to make it happen. Please bear with me and please understand. And I'm going to do whatever I can.
We're here.
I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared for my life and everything. You know what I mean? There's a lot of.
Well, we're behind you. We're behind you 100%. Know that.
Okay.
I promise you that.
All right.
And so is Small Town Forgotten.
So he has said yes again. I wish I could say at the time of this recording that it has already happened, but it hasn't. Oh, he still says that he's in, and these things do take time. But when it comes down to the moment, will he follow through? It might not seem much to you, taking a polygraph test or cooperating with the police. But remember, this is a man who spent 3 years in prison waiting for a trial that never happened. He told the St. Francis County Sheriff's Department the very weekend of the murder that Jimmy Wade was not the person that he hit, and they didn't believe him. Or maybe they did believe him, but felt that a stranger confessing was a lot more palatable than a local killing another local. Again, no one working on the case then is working on the case now. But that fact doesn't matter. David Brian White doesn't see law enforcement as individual people. He sees them as a system bent on keeping him in prison. I've never asked him why he is in prison now, although it's not much of a stretch to conclude that his 3 years in prison for this crime could have contributed to the cycle of his life. What did Andrea say? Whatever good you do, good comes to you. Do you believe that? Taking a polygraph test may not seem like an act of bravery, but it could be. The risk is real. Polygraph tests track your physiological reactions to a series of questions. How can you know it will accurately read that you're telling the truth if the entire situation causes you anxiety? In short, causes physiological reactions. Again, you would have to trust the system. Trust the people giving you the test, that they understand the variance of error, that truth will prevail. Trusting them is brave, and he would be doing it for the twins because of his compassion for them, because of his goodness. One more person tipping the scales to justice for Jimmy Wade Martin. I can only believe that goodness will come back to him.
Okay. I figure we do have one more thing. Hey, Mind of Monsters, I'm glad to see you. We have one more Molly sent me, and I'm not positive how to get this on the screen, so this may not be great, but I'm gonna try anyway. Okay. Wow, it worked. All right, let's play this and then we will be done.
Gettysburg College is currently conducting an investigation following a troubling incident involving a former student athlete. Reports indicate that this now All right. Well, that's not going to pull up
So I will play this Molly tomorrow for sure. When we do the next two, so that I can have this all pulled up, and it might be a little bit easier that way too. Thank you guys for joining me. I know I've messed up 1,000 times, but you got to live and learn. But tomorrow I will go live right after Dago's morning show. So if you guys tune into him, I will be right after. Is that okay with you guys? You think you can do that? But I will play the next two, and I will, if that time doesn't work, I can do it throughout the day. But I figure if I go right after Dago, it might be a little bit easier. Sorry, Kimber. I get loud at times. I get all wound up. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.